Being that today is the feast day of Saint Joan of Arc, I thought that it was fitting today to talk about the symbolism of, well, Saint Joan of Arc and what her story means. To understand the symbolism, it is first important to talk about the importance of the feminine, for both the sowing of the new seed, you can say, and for the preservation of an identity, particularly when a pendulum swings too far to the edges. To go deeper into this, we need to look into the pattern revealed to us in the biblical story of the Annunciation to the Mother of God. Now, I've written about this in more depth in my blog, so if you want to check that out, you can go visit my blog at holy7.tv, but here I'll only cover the basic pattern. But in the Annunciation, we see heaven, or the angel Gabriel, coming down to Mary, earth, to bring her the word or the identity of all identities into the world. This event is the beginning of the complete change and redemption of the world. We can look at the war between England and France as a battle between two identities or two bodies, and through it France has lost its king, the head of this body. A king or any ruler at the top is responsible for holding the identity of the place or structure where he resides. But when a body does not provide a home to the feminine, or when the feminine is strict, it can be responsible for a massive change, like mentioned before with Mary, or the opposite pattern of Eve in the garden talking to the serpent. We see the start of this pattern with a young peasant girl from France that we know as Saint Joan of Arc. When England occupied northern France, it was missing its rightful king or the head. Northern France began to hold the identity of England and not France. Here we see the coming of Saint Michael the Archangel telling Joan of Arc, not in these exact words, but basically that she must return the head of France. This is very similar to the Annunciation I mentioned earlier, but instead of carrying the word itself, like Mary, she in some way carried the identity or child of France. Not literally by pregnancy, but by the return of a king to his throne. What is also interesting is that two other saints that came to help Joan of Arc are Saint Catherine of Alexandria and Saint Margaret of Antioch. Both are responsible for the beheading, you can say, of the pagan rulers of the time and bringing Christianity to their kingdoms. Now, those rulers weren't actually beheaded. I only put it that way in terms of they represent being the head of their body of the pagan kingdom which they ruled. Ironically enough, St. Catherine of Alexandria and St. Margaret lost their own heads in an actual beheading at the cost of what they did. It is also important to note that all women mentioned here, St. Catherine, St. Margaret, St. Joan of Arc, and Mary, were virgins because they dedicated their lives to Christ. Now, I just also want to note that there are many prophecies that France would be saved by a virgin, just as Revelation shows us a beast being slain by a virgin, which is why this pattern is so important. The feminine hold the power, you can say, to change the course of a family, a country, or the world. Almost all change starts with the feminine. Other notable feminine saints that have done this is also Saint Catherine of Siena, which is responsible for returning the Pope to Rome, or you can say the head of Rome back to Rome. Now, another aspect of Saint Joan of Arc that's interesting is the fact that she had to cross-dress as a male soldier in order to achieve her goals. Now, this is this weird flip or inversion that Pagel talks about with the left and right symbolism, usually visible through the yin and yang symbol. Now, it is said that Saint Joan of Arc also never killed anybody, and she only carried the banner into battle, which further strengthens the symbolism that Saint Joan of Arc was there to carry the identity of France back to its rightful place, which is at the throne. Now, as we know, at the rest of this story, Saint Joan of Arc ends up being successful in her call to Saint Michael and the prophecies by bringing back the king to France and not taking the throne for herself, which is an important distinction. She returns things to their rightful place and doesn't take the throne for herself, which is the satanic pattern, kind of like in the Sith. The Sith kills its ruler and takes his place. Saint Joan of Arc does not do that, but returns the king or the head to its rightful place. And at the end, Saint Joan of Arc ended up losing her life, just as the other two saints that have helped her before, mainly Saint Catherine and Saint Margaret. Now, I think the pattern in the women losing their lives into bringing about this new change or identity has something to do with the feminine symbolism itself, in that a woman goes through a cycle, and at some point through the cycle, she becomes infertile and in a way carries this mini death within her. You can also see this pattern when during marriage, when a woman gives up her family's identity to carry the identity of her husband, meaning the switching of the last names. And the reason I mention this is because all three women dedicated their virginity to Christ, in a way married themselves to him. And so by doing so, they ended up losing their own lives to fulfill his will. Though obviously to a higher extreme, in Christianity, giving up your life in martyrdom to God is one of the highest glories, and this is why you get ascended directly into heaven. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into the symbolism of martyrdom here, but hopefully you can see with the connection of the feminine patterns in biblical scripture, along with the story of Saint Joan of Arc, can reveal to you what the role of the feminine is, or at least a piece of it. And it further gets strengthened by the relationship between the two other saints that appear to her too in the vision, which also share a very similar pattern. Now, I hope you have a good day, and I'll talk to you really soon. If you enjoyed the content here on my channel, please like and subscribe. And if you would like to learn more, I have a blog on my website where you can learn more about symbolism, as well as short form videos and articles on my Instagram page.